President Muhammadu Buhari presents 2019 budget of 8.83 trillion naira to the National Assembly. Nigeria's foreign reserve rise by $1.518 billion in December of 2018. The country generated 5 trillion naira in the year 2018, and unemployment in the third quarter of 2018 rises by 11% over the corresponding period of 2017. This is Business Express reaching you from our Abuja studios. As we begin the countdown to Christmas, we shall review how the economy has performed through 2018 as it relates to the budget. I am Amina Nigerian. Please do stay tuned. President Muhammadu Buhari today presented the 2019 appropriation bill to the National Assembly at a joint session with a commitment to implement a new minimum wage in the new fiscal year. Given a breakdown of proposed 8.83 trillion naira expenditure plan, the president disclosed plans to expend 1% of consolidated revenue fund on health, settlement of inherited pensions, and complete migration of ministries, departments and agencies to the Integrated Personal Payroll Information System (IPPIS) by March of 2019.
Current B. Debt service of 2.14 trillion naira, and C. Statutory transfers of about 492.36 billion naira. D. Sinking fund of 120 billion naira, which will be used to retire maturing bond to local contractors. And E. Capital expenditure of 2.031 trillion naira, including capital supplementation, but excluding the capital component of statutory transfers. The provision for statutory transfers in 2019 is 492.36 billion naira, which is a 7% decrease from 2018. However, transfers to Niger Delta Development Commission and the Universal Basic Education Commission are projected to be higher as they are directly related to the quantum of oil revenue. The sum of 2.14 trillion naira has been provided for debt service. Of this amount, 80% is to service domestic debt, which amounts to about 70% of the total debt. I will read that again. The sum of 2.14 trillion naira has been provided for debt service, of which amount 80% is to service domestic debt, which accounts for 70% of the total debt. Although our national debt is within sustainable limits, we need to increase our domestic resource mobilization to bring down our debt-revenue ratio over the medium term. A substantial part of the current cost proposal for 2019 is for payment of salaries and overheads.
The budget is benchmarked on $60 per barrel of crude, 305 naira exchange rate to the dollar, 3.01% GDP growth rate, and 9.98% inflation rate. We are privileged to have in the studio Seth Akutson. He is a professor of economics at Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Yeah.
President Muhammadu Buhari has just presented the budget proposal to the National Assembly, a little lower than last year by 400 billion naira. What do you make of, say, the revenue and expenditure plan of the president?
Let us thank God because we're able to have the president present the budget as planned. It's a very challenging period for the government in terms of the myriad of expenditure that the government is going to battle with between now and the end of 2019. If you look at the entire budget, the presentation, the indices, the fundamentals, find out that it's a little bit challenging. More so, we cannot claim that the challenges in 2019 will be lower than the challenges in 2018. Now we are now reducing the total planned expenses for the government.
But do you see the management of these challenges being addressed properly?
Well, yes. Of course, we have the wherewithal. If the courage is there, if the goodwill is there, why not? We'll be able to manage it properly. And in fact, just like the Minister of Budget and Planning said, we want to have a leaner budget. Want to, begin to cut unnecessary expenses. Want to block loopholes and all that. If that is the case, why not? And I think they will make a good of it going forward.
Okay, we have 2.28 trillion naira in the budget for capital expenditure. What do you make of that?
Well, if you look at the amount, it may look too big, but looking at the challenges, for instance, in 2018, going to 2019, we have a lot of uncompleted projects that the government need to execute, the government need to complete, the government need to, and not only that, you have a lot of investment infrastructure that government has planned, especially if you look at the economic recovery and growth plans that the government has put in place. You know that that amount will virtually be like just a tip of the iceberg. But hopefully, if that amount is managed very well, we're going to see the impact on the economy come to 2019.
Now, civil servants were a bit happy. He did make mention of the implementation of the minimum wage. How do you see public servants and national agencies responding to this information?
Well, that is good news if we mention it, but it has to go beyond mentioning because right now, we don't know, the document is not before the National Assembly, so we cannot even call it a law as such. Maybe politically it was very good, but we have to see how they are going to incorporate into the budget and how that implementation will come sooner, maybe probably in the first quarter of 2019. Let's be hopeful. No.
Let's be hopeful.
Yes.
Now, still talking about public servants, the IPPIS has been ongoing, and there's talk about making sure it goes to March next year, hopefully to round it up. Do you see that happening?
Well, when we talk about that integrated payroll system and information system that the government has proposed, it has been on for long. For instance, the head of service of the Federation have once threatened any civil servant that refuses to upload his information may not be paid and all that. And some MDAs have already started implementing it. And for instance, you have the police and some other organizations who have taken the lead. So by March, I think there's time. And I think we can plan, but the information to pass across to people need to be improved because some are claiming ignorance, they don't know what is going on. I think that we can do that. But having said that, I think March is a very realistic day that we can achieve that for all MDAs.
No, but then is it about civil servants not registering, or is it the MDAs?
No. For instance, the MDAs, of course, the civil servants are working within the MDAs.
Exactly.
So when we talk about the MDAs, it's the civil servants that are involved because they are the one collecting the salary. The MDA is not a personality entity as such. So what they are saying is that both the MDAs and the civil servants should team up and ensure that by March next year, that payment system has already come to be. That is where we are now.
Okay. Yeah. Under the recovery, or let's say subsidy, 305 billion naira for the next fiscal year, will you see tensions easing and say marketers?
Well, the challenge is that one of the reasons why we've been facing challenges in the economy, we subsidize a lot of things. Education is subsidized, fuel is subsidized, road is subsidized, and a lot of subsidy here and there. So, given the challenges, the amount, except the government is planning in the future to increase the fuel price again, the amount of subsidy that has been expended, even in 2018 alone. So if that is the amount is being proposed for 2019, I don't think it will go a long way to take care of the challenges. The fact the oil marketers were threatening strike. The amount they are demanding is far above what is being proposed.
But will it ease tension?
Yes, it will ease. Of course, it will ease the tension if they agree, and then of course, if the balance is being planned on how they are going to offset it, the tension may be eased.
Now let's talk about benchmark.
Yeah.
In the proposed budget, $60 per barrel. Is it a realistic expectation looking at the current numbers of crude oil?
Well, when this budget is being planned, I think the crude price was hovering around $80 to a barrel. And later, as I'm talking to you now, within the last few days, few hours, it has been hovering below the $60 benchmark, and now maybe around 50-something, 58, 59 or thereabout. Now, if that is the case, and then the Economy Recovery and Growth Plan, has about $50 to a barrel. So I think we need to marry these two together, and we have to be realistic. If you plan for $60 and there is any shock in the oil price market, how do we survive it? And I think perhaps there's still room for review, because as it is now, this amount is fairly on the high side, given the challenges we're facing in the oil, market volatility.
Okay, looking at the budget in its entirety and looking at 2019, what comes to your mind?
Well, we should be hopeful, and given the fact that the government is trying to go lean, and if that is the case, I think there will be a lot of savings and a lot of discipline, a lot of cutting measures in terms of expenses. If that is the case, perhaps the little amount we have, we're going to use it judiciously. But if we still go all the way to begin to spend anyhow at MDAs and government agencies and what have you, you find out that we're still going back to the recession that we got ourselves to escape.
Now, your closing thoughts on the budget.
Well, let us be hopeful going forward 2019, and let's look at some of the fundamentals that the government have raised. For instance, the exchange rate of 305. You can see that even at the level of government, except we want to subsidize that exchange rate again, we have to review it. And then the inflation rate. We can also look at how to work out that single-digit inflation rate is almost about half of what we're experiencing. So it's a lot of challenges that government need to work on that as well. And apart from that, you look at the growth rate of the economy. Now we're talking below 2%, and now we're proposing over 3%, a little over it. Now, if that is the case, so you can see that the budget has a lot of challenges in it that the government need to work hard to ensure that those fundamentals in the budget are addressed appropriately.
Okay, now one more question before I let you go. There is plan to fill the deficits by borrowing and also to service debt. What's your take on that?
You see, well, there is nothing wrong in borrowing if the amount to be borrowed is to be utilized judiciously. As it is, most of the borrowing of the past have not been utilized appropriately. And if the borrowing, for instance, you can see the railway. If you borrow and then people are seeing the services are doing well, fine. But I think that the government, there's no way out other than to borrow. And I think that is what the government is going in for. Of course, you cannot manufacture, you cannot print, you cannot do that. So you have to go for it. But the money has to be utilized appropriately.
Said Akutsun, a professor of economics, Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Thank you for joining us on Business Express today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, Babatunde Fowler, says the FIRS, with the support of other agencies, have realized the sum of 5 trillion naira so far this year. The chairman stated this during an interview with pressmen in Abuja.
We believe that we should close at least 5.3 trillion, which will be the highest in the history of FIRS. And we believe that with that additional revenue, that the state governments and the federal government will be able to provide more services and more development to the people of Nigeria.
He also said granting anonymity and political backing to states' Board of Internal Revenues is key to boosting the revenue generation at the state level. Nigeria's foreign reserves rose by $1.518 billion from $41.523 billion on November 22nd to $43.041 billion as of December 17th, as released by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Records revealed that reserves, which had suffered significant declines in past months, had been maintaining a steady rise recently. The nation's foreign exchange reserves fell from $45.838 billion at the end of August to $41.533 billion in November 21st. Records from the Apex Bank show that the external reserves were gradually moving on a recovery path. The governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, had earlier said crude was a major source of the country's foreign exchange. The nation's economy became sensitive to fluctuations in the price of crude oil. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Adogbe, has disclosed that farmers will hold 40% of total shares in the Bank of Agriculture by the time its commercialization is concluded by the Bureau of Public Enterprises, BPE. The minister said the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, would own 10% of the bank, Ministry of Finance 10%, while institutional investors would buy the balance of 40%. He spoke when he received both the Senate and House committees on agriculture and rural development. The minister, however, lamented the huge 6.70 billion naira overhead on its personnel in the 2017-2018 budget. He also indicated that the ministry was unable to achieve 100% budget performance, partly because of late release of capital expenditure. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is working on increasing penetration in the downstream sector to enable it to capture 30% of the retail market in the country. Group Managing Director of the corporation, Dr. Maikanti Baru in Abuja, said the corporation would reach the mark by 2020 from the current level of 14%. Baru, who spoke at the first triennial delegates conference at the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, NNPC retail branch, said the company was acquiring land across the country to ensure the plan becomes a reality through its subsidiaries, NNPC Retail Limited. Baru stated that NNPC was determined to ensure that the prevailing availability of petroleum products across the country is sustained. Now, from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, trade ended negative on the floor today, 19th of December 2018. The O-share index depreciated by 0.35% to close at 30,704.98 basis points, with market capitalization at 11.2 trillion naira. Now, U.S. stocks index futures were slightly higher on Wednesday morning as traders eagerly awaited the Federal Reserve's latest monetary policy decision. Bossede Abel has details. Let's take a look.
On the global scene, stock markets opened mixed on 19th December 2018. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia Overall Index started on a positive note, while Nairobi All-Share, Tunisia's Tunidex and Ghana's GSA Composite Index opened low. Asian stocks opened mixed in the early hours of Wednesday morning ahead of a policy decision by the United States Federal Reserve. Stocks in Europe were slightly higher after a dramatic fall in the price of oil spurred speculation in the United States Federal Reserve. DAX appreciated 0.33%, FTSE 100 0.67% and CAC 40 0.29%. In the United States, stocks were slightly higher on Wednesday morning as traders eagerly awaited the Federal Reserve's latest monetary policy decision.
Now, still talking commodity, the consumption of watermelon in Nigeria has increased sharply, owing mainly to its health and nutritive values. However, Nigeria's output is only 0.09% of global production, which is 50,000 to 100,000 tons. The high moisture content of the commodity requires sophisticated storage facilities, which is extremely expensive and requires major financial outlays. Experts say investment in watermelon production would potentially boost Nigeria's export revenue and reduce its oil dependence. We now take a look at commodity prices. The International Air Transport Association says African carriers, include those in Nigeria, are expected to report a $300 million net loss in 2019, despite an expected global airline industry net profit of 35.5 billion naira. The IATA said the $300 million net loss would, however, be a slight improvement from the $400 million recorded in 2018. It added that the loss would make Africa the weakest region has it been over the past 4 years. The association added that the forecasted figures were slightly ahead of the $32.3 billion expected net profit in 2018, which was revised down from $33.8 billion forecast. In June, it stated that it's optimistic that the run of solid value creation for investors will continue for at least another year. But there are downside risks as the economic and political environment will remain volatile. This is where we wrap up today's episode. Remember to send us your feedback via email businessexpress@nta.gov.ng. You can also reach us through our Twitter handle, and the handle is NTA News Now. Don't forget the hashtag BizX showing on your screen. Until you come your way again, I am Amina Nujem. Thanks for being a part of the program.